Taking a little longer than usual today.
Feel free to say.
Okay.
Feel free to speak.
There we go. Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. And on a Friday night, I'm thinking back. This was our regular meeting time when we were meeting face to face at Unity Church. This would be our time, Friday night at 7:30, when we were all together. And hopefully soon we will start having meetings again. We'll have to figure that out. But I want to just welcome Bernard Haisch and Marsha Sims here. We're so thrilled to have them because longtime FMBR members, and Bernard has presented multiple times at FMBR, and we're just very happy to have him and Marsha here today. Bernard is an astrophysicist, author of over 130 scientific publications, and was a scientific editor at the Astrophysical Journal for 10 years. He's the author of God Theory and the Purpose-Guided Universe, which he presented at FMBR when those came out. And Marsha, his wonderful wife, has a multidisciplinary background and years of experience interfacing with businesses, scientists, and their projects, and immersing herself in the world of music. She's worked at Lockheed Palo Alto Research, the Journal of Scientific Exploration, the California Institute for Physics and Astrophysics, and Mini One Networks, and the Digital Universe Foundation. They have a new book coming out, The Miracle of Our Universe. It's going to come out next week. It's actually being released on Monday. I've pre-ordered my copy. I'm very excited to get it. And so Marsha and Bernie, welcome. We're so glad to have you here.
Great to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited to be here. This is a really wonderful opportunity to reunite with our friends at FMBR.
Exactly. And I think everyone here, most everyone here knows you and loves you, and we just can't wait to hear what you're bringing for us. Just this wonderful new view of consciousness, God, science, and reality. So take it away.
Take it away. Okay. Well, we just got our authors' copies.
Right.
We just got our authors' copies, The Miracle of Our Universe. And so I'm very excited to have this here. We worked on this project for quite a while. Bernie started the book about 5 years ago, but it's taken a while. I joined forces with him to help him because after a long career in astrophysics, he came down with Parkinson's. And so it was difficult for him to type and to write. And his speech is a little weaker than it used to be. So I'm giving a lot of this presentation to help him because I'm a trained opera singer and speaking is easy for me. I hope I don't overblow the microphone. He tells me my voice is really loud. So anyway, we're talking about the miracle of our universe, a new view of consciousness, God, science, and reality. And I call Bernard Bernie. That's really the affectionate surname that we use for him around here, but Bernard is more formal for publications. So that's why it says Bernard there. Okay, so first slide. And I did all this slide. I put together the graphics, etc. So one of my passions is graphic arts also, in addition to music and teaching music. I teach music too. So here's a little overview. Our book is a model of reality. We're not just biological machines. We're conscious, immortal beings who co-create a virtual reality together with the great cosmic consciousness known as God. This is surprising, but this is what we believe. The root reality does not consist of physical stuff. We are made out of star stuff, as Carl Sagan said. And God made the stars and us. Do you want to say anything about Carl Sagan and the star stuff?
Well, yeah, certainly made people aware of the idea that, or at least our physical reality comes from astrophysical phenomena like supernovae and such. So he really preached a good relationship between science and spirituality. But he stopped there. He didn't go any deeper, didn't look any deeper to see whether there was a source for the stars. And we're here to say that there indeed is, and it's a source that, in fact, applies to the entire universe and everything in it, including us, and gives us, I think, the happy knowledge that we are creatures who are not going to disappear when we die, that we're going to have a rather wealthy,
Robust afterlife.
robust afterlife.
Yes.
So that is.
We
So-
believe in life after death.
Right,
And,
so it's-
yeah,
yeah.
near-death experiences, reincarnation, all of that. We cover that later on in the talk.
So we present a model
Yeah.
of consciousness, God, science, and reality, not the real McCoy, just the model of, to see how far that takes us in terms of the ability to conjure up a new system of thought about our own nature, for example, that would be very beneficial for the world to subscribe and by.
Yeah, so we present a model of consciousness, God, science, and reality. Our consciousness is literally a piece of God. This consciousness is either vast beyond our wildest imagination or possibly infinite and eternal. Our physical universe of matter and energy is actually a virtual simulation, which is thought into existence by a universal consciousness. In fact, God made everything. We already covered a bit of our background. Bernie and I have been married for 36 years, so we've shared many ideas together during our lifetime. And I already said why I helped him write the book. But I also introduced some important new ideas that Bernie would not have spoken about, and that's the power of music. And in my own spiritual experiences, I had a near-death experience, and I had an awakening of the heart with Gangaji, which was very special. Yes, that's an important point here. We have chosen to refer to God as He, but we realize that consciousness is formless, genderless, non-binary, and asexual. It's only the idiosyncrasies of the English language that require us to choose a pronoun when we're referring to him. And it just felt really weird saying he, she throughout the whole book.
That would be clunky.
Yeah, it was kind of clunky. So, okay, that's our background. So, just what is the miracle of our universe? The physical matter, universe of matter and energy is a cosmic simulation, a virtual reality that is thought into existence by the thoughts of a universal consciousness that is vast beyond our wildest imaginations and may even be infinite and eternal. What is the force behind the existence of our universe? We call this force cosmic consciousness, God, or creator. God is a spirit or can be identified as the source. We propose a model of God that starts with the premise that at first there was nothing. In the beginning was the Logos. We read in John chapter 1, verse 1. And the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. Logos is a Greek word that means the expression of a thought. There are many subtle, different usages of the word, but the interpretation as an expression of a thought is particularly relevant to our God model. Usually people think the word logos means the word, and that is another translation. But the Greek translation really is an expression of a thought, and that goes along with our idea that God created the universe by his thoughts. We've devised a self-consistent model of reality to explain life and its purpose and what it might be like in the afterlife. We've set up a simulation with models of how God and science can coexist, and we'll tell you about that in a little bit. God created the universe, but this is very important, with the energy of love. And it is not just a warm, fuzzy feeling, but it's actually a powerful force.
It is claimed, yeah, by some mystics, people who think about this deeply, that that energy really is the driving force behind the universe, and that's really difficult for me to picture how that could be. I mean, love is supposed to be something, a soft, fuzzy thing that you share with your sweetheart, but I think that there may be some good reason to investigate whether love, as defined in the in the spiritual world might not give us a clue as to other aspects of the universe that would be fueled by another force like this. Could be another unknown force. It intrigues me, but I'm also admittedly completely at a loss as to how to be specific about this.
Yeah, well, Bernie has a problem because love is an emotion, and it's difficult to scientifically prove an emotion. But an emotion has an energy. It's got an electrical energy, and if you think about the emotions that you've experienced in your life, really strong emotions really can energize you in positive and negative ways. So the love we're talking about is God's love for us, and that love enhances consciousness in a very strong emotional expression. Modern psychology claims that emotions arise out of love, which these emotions are energy in motion. So it's still debatable exactly how love created the universe, but we feel that love is very important to the whole idea. So slide 2, what is the miracle of our universe? Why would a universal consciousness create a virtual universe? Could it be to evolve itself through the free will exercised by the beings that inhabit the universe? Perhaps to create experiences for itself in this virtual universe. Literally, everything is consciousness in action. We and other creatures are the offspring of this universal consciousness, and our role is to be its eyes and ears.
It's I think almost trivially simple to identify an aspect of this view of reality that makes sense, and that is, if we have God being a vast cosmic consciousness, then that's great. But what does a great cosmic consciousness know about its own self? How can it enjoy itself or learn how to improve itself, if such a thing is possible? So, if you're God, this is an example I often give. If you are God and you feel some morning when you get up that you'd like to go ski down a mountain, well, okay, that's fine, but spirits like God can't ski down a mountain. There's no heavenly. Well, you get the idea. But what would happen in the case that we present is that the creating of a world in which skiing is possible would serve that purpose of God being able to do that. Now, we expect He will always do other important things, but it's a simple example of what I mean by why God would try to sort of have the bits of Himself brought into the universe and elsewhere, so that she can experience what it is to have such a universe that she has made.
Because we're God's eyes and ears.
Right.
Yeah. The difference between virtual reality and ordinary reality is that ordinary reality doesn't really exist. If you can grok that. Ordinary reality refers to physical things which only exist in the mind of the creator. It is a dream. God created a virtual universe of what seems like physical matter, energy, and time, booting up that simulation with a phenomenon called the Big Bang, which gave birth to light composed of photons and other particles, which in turn generated a vast field of electromagnetic energy. Zero-point energy, or ZPE, which is ubiquitous and infinite throughout the universe. And the zero-point energy is very, very important topic to Bernie, because he spent a lot of energy and thought pursuing how to tap the zero-point energy to use for energy to help mankind and to help our planet. And I'll tell you more about that in a while. So some of you probably know what the Big Bang is, and some of you might be wondering, well, what in the world is the Big Bang? So I decided I wanted to just tell you a little bit about it. The Big Bang is how astronomers explain the way the universe began. It is the idea that the universe began as just a single little tiny point, and then got compressed in such tiny little point that it finally just exploded. And then it expanded and stretched to grow as large as it is right now. And it is still stretching.
Now, this is something that is a key belief of astronomers, and mine too, that the the Big Bang shows the creation of the universe, the coming of the universe into being, sort of from the inside out. And that's variation on that is sort of what is commonly taken to be the meaning of that. On the other hand, there's a problem here that hasn't been able to be solved in the last, well, I don't know, many years, and that is how can the 0 point, or rather, how can the Big Bang cause the universe to grow and expand, not the universe, but the cosmos to grow and expand? And the answer is it's very difficult to know how that could happen, because what comes before the Big Bang? What caused it to expand? What caused it to happen? And I don't think that's a problem that you can just brush under the rug indefinitely. There really is something here that we've got to think about, and maybe.
Well, we did talk about it later in the slides.
Yeah.
So yeah. So just how did it come to pass that there even was a Big Bang? What was this little compression of that single little point?
This brings actually to a question of what the Big
Jewish,
Bang is.
yeah. Well, no, we go into the Jewish mysticism at this point,
Right.
and we talk about the Ein Sof, the nothingness that existed even before God. But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves here. We should continue. All right. So let's see. The view that we discuss of God in our book is that God is very different from the view religions developed centuries ago. We don't believe that concepts of God need to stay the same forever. They can evolve with experience over time. Some say lack of change is a good mark of verity. However, others, such as Bernie and myself, we think change is essential, especially now. A good example is my recently purchased new car, my Mazda SUV, which is full of lights, buttons, and arrows and computerized control. And this makes a 1920s Model T seem like a museum piece, and it is. So let's see. God experience, yeah, so we already talked about that. So let's go to the next slide. So what is the simulation hypothesis? We use the idea taken from the book by Rizwan Berk called the simulation hypothesis. It raises the fundamental question of whether we are characters inside a simulated reality that is so rendered that we cannot distinguish it from physical reality. The atom used to be considered a miniature solar system with electrons orbiting a nucleus. It is now viewed more abstractly as a nucleus being surrounded by electrons that form a cloud of probability. So the classical atom here on the left is the way I was taught that atoms functioned when I was in high school. But now, if you look at the quantum atom picture on the right, you see all this fuzzy orange, medium color orange, dark orange, and purple going around this little tiny nucleus in the center. And so that fuzzy area, that represents any point in time where an electron might just happen to be, and it's hard to predict where it really would be. So that's why it's fuzzy.
This is an idea that Werner Heisenberg proposed, and I think this is the same as the Bohr model. I shouldn't get too technical like this, but these are consistent with our use of the quantum atom for hydrogen, and make it possible, I think, with an experiment that I've been working on for some time, and it even was funded with a patent recently. It relies on some of the properties that come about when you look at the quantum atom the way we pictured it here.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Jovian experiment.
Sure.
Yes, yeah, got it on, got it down in the slides. Okay. So, second section of the simulation hypothesis. So when you sit in your favorite armchair, you are actually being supported by clouds of probability. Probabilities are numbers that govern physics in our world. In our book, we developed the idea that a matter-based universe can be replaced by a number-based universe. This leads us to the likelihood that reality is a simulation. Bernie already mentioned Heisenberg, who saw atoms and elementary particles as potentialities rather than things or facts. They are not real, they form a world of potentialities. Then there's Sir Martin Rees, another famous physicist. In the beginning, there were only probabilities. He said the universe could only come into existence if someone observed it. It does not matter that the observers turned up several billion years later. The universe exists because we are aware of it. This is called the measurement problem in quantum physics. How is it possible that if you cut open your armchair and take a measurement of a few electrons inside, those electrons will be promoted into existence by virtue of being measured, but the unmeasured electrons will be left to languish in a cloud of probability? This is one of the elements of quantum physics. It's very mysterious, and Bernie already mentioned the Bohr mode.
By the way, Sir Martin Rees was the astronomer royal of the astronomer royal
In England.
Yeah,
That's the only place you could. That's the only place you could have an astronomer royal.
We don't do that here.
No,
I consider to be
no, we don't have titles here. We just are. Virtual reality. There exists one cosmic consciousness whose thoughts create us. So then what? Well, that would be a universe full of interesting stuff for us to play in and learn in. And where does all this interesting stuff come from? Nowhere. The interesting stuff is just a virtual reality which is in the creator's imagination. This requires unbelievable bandwidth and data storage, but it solves one of the greatest mysteries of all time. How did the universe come about? It didn't. It never did, never will exist. It is a non-physical simulation running in the mind of the creator. Consciousness alone exists. I think I skipped bullet 2. What are we proposing? We're proposing that God imagines all of this by organizing his thoughts to computer-like algorithms which run in his mind.
Yeah, well, imagine this, that God, if he wants to create something, doesn't have to go into his kitchen or his hobby shop and muck around with things to try to get a real object of some kind into existence. All he has to do is think. Thinking in this view is everything there is. There's nothing other than this cosmic consciousness whose ability to think is unlimited. And whose ability to think is the way to create things that will then be a manifestation of his power. So everything runs in the mind of God. Consciousness alone exists. Nothing else. That's our view.
Stephen Hawking toyed with the notion of knowing the mind of God. Well, here's what we say. In this view, we emerge directly from the creator God, and we are as real as the creator, but matter as physical stuff is a simulation. What evidence is there that might support this? Brian Whitworth, professor of technology and information processing, at Massey University in New Zealand, said one of the mysteries of our world is how every photon of light, every electron and quark, and indeed every point of space itself seem to just know what to do at each moment. The mystery is that these tiniest parts of the universe have no mechanisms or structures by which to make such decisions. Only God could make those decisions. Next slide. Some of you will recognize this as a scene from the Star Trek, The Next Generation. Will Riker is in a hologram room or virtual reality. So this idea has already been developed a lot. It's been used by the movie making business. Here's another example of worlds within worlds. A man using a VR headset in a mountain climbing simulation. This picture I found very humorous. I couldn't stop laughing when I first found it, so I wanted to share it with you. The experience teleports him to a jagged cliff in a virtual world that is so realistic that he could barely look down. When he does, his knees buckle and his palm sweats, and he falls and tumbles down into the valley below. Finally, his brain has to interrupt. Hey, dude, you're not really there. Come on. Next slide. Seth Lloyd, professor of mechanical engineering at MIT, states that we could have the whole universe simulated in a computer in 600 years, provided that computational power increases according to Moore's law.
And in fact, it doesn't matter whether it's 600 years, or 6,000 years, or 600,000 years. The point is just that with enough bandwidth and computer storage capability, there are some amazing things you can do to mimic reality. And I take the word mimic back, to create a reality that is real, as far as we're concerned. So this is what we can expect if things go well over the next several centuries.
Okay, next slide. So here's a virtual reality coming right out of a screen. Seth Lloyd's perspective: everything that exists is the output of the universe's computer. As the computation proceeds, reality unfolds. So you can see it's being computed in real time, and the guy's coaxing it out of the computer. Our model of God. God is a life source of enormous creative cosmic energy. He is spirit. He's not an old-fashioned white-bearded desert patriarch sitting on a throne with a staff, floating around on clouds and enjoying being continuously praised in song while angels play their harps. We present a model of God, of the creation of the universe and our purpose in life. We call this the God model, and believe that it represents a model of God, the universe, and reality that is compatible with the 21st century science, a model that is worth believing in. The God of our model does not hurl lightning bolts or care one way or the other whether or not we believe in him or her during our life on earth. The God of our model is endlessly tolerant and infinitely loving.
And this God, as far as we can see, is I mean, you can be an atheist and believe in this kind of God. In fact, I think that's the case, and that is the case.
You can still believe in your religion and still believe in this kind of God too. It's kind of open-ended.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah. We can't really offend God no matter how hard we try, because he loves us. And we need to know that and feel God's love. We'll have much happier, positive society and lives if we realize we really, truly are loved.
Right.
God is an unbounded consciousness, and we call God that exists beyond space and time. This consciousness is, as I said before, it's neither male nor female, and it created our universe, and I explained the Big Bang, and this happened approximately 13.8 billion years ago.
That's the Big Bang. When the Big Bang occurred, which we find out how by running backwards with an astronomical clock. We're going backwards here to get there. But what's missing here is still an understanding of what happened between the initial onset of something like the universe and the Big Bang happening. Or maybe we just have to live with the fact that that's an infinite and also infinitely unable to understand reality of it all.
Okay. Our model of God, slide 2. We've said this before. Consciousness is the only thing that exists. All material things are an illusion, a numerical simulation running in the mind of God. There's no need to create reality. Wishing to know himself, God gives birth to countless offspring made of the same consciousness as his own. As sentient beings, we are all immortal incarnations. We're sparks of the bonfire that is God and living in simulated reality. An important aspect to notice and to consider is that God experiences and involves himself through free will actions of his offspring. So free will is really vital to make everything work, because if we did not have free will, then it would just be a puppet show. God wouldn't get to learn and grow. So we do have plans for ourselves before we're born, and we kind of recognize these opportunities when they come up, what we're supposed to do. But we still have the choice to follow our plans or to go a different direction, and that's our free will. We live many lives on Earth and elsewhere, but we forget lives when we are born in order to be able to exercise free will in the current life. However, there are exceptions, and I'm one of them. I happen to remember past lives because I had a near-death experience, and that kind of pulled back the veil. But most people do not remember past lives. So we do believe there are many other civilizations in the universe, and there are spiritual realms and other universes with properties and dimensions different from our own. We think of heaven as our spiritual home where we reside between lives. And there's such a thing as karma, positive and negative. It reflects and determines the course of all of our lives. So, okay, we'll go on to the next one. Here's an interesting topic. Why is there no hell? Okay, we believe there is no literal hell. Hell is rather the consequence of our free will actions, which are perceivable in the afterlife. These consequences may be for a time unpleasant, but we don't believe that negative karma is eternal.
And the key here is that hell cannot exist because any beings that God would send to hell in the classical view, that for them it wouldn't be fair, because if we live in the physical reality, then nothing we can do can be infinitely bad. Just can't have that with infinite time.
Because God is infinitely just.
God is infinitely just, so
Yeah.
we wouldn't be able to hand out infinite penance to sinners. So that makes no sense in terms of a God doing that, something which would be horrible for him to do. And the other is, well, why would God want to condemn himself to a horrible place? I mean, God would then have to condemn himself to hell if he was going to be just about this. So there,
And he wouldn't want to do it because we're sparks of God.
right.
So he wouldn't want to condemn himself to hell because then he'd have to experience it himself.
Right.
So
it's a non-sequitur.
That's our logic about this.
Right.
And I think it makes things seem a lot more lighthearted. It's not having to worry about, I committed this infraction and I might go to hell. That seems kind of painful worrying.
I ate a hot dog on Friday.
Yeah. Bernie wrote part of a chapter on the hot dog from hell that you'll read about in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. When he was how old?
I think it must have been about 11 or so.
He was 11 years old and he was pretty staunch Catholic. And that was the time when you were not allowed to eat meat on Fridays. So he was so afraid he was going to be condemned to hell for being at a friend's house and being offered a hot dog.
And he was eating it and enjoying it.
And because he forgot it was Friday. So anyway.
And then what do? You spit it out or what?
Yeah.
Let's move on.
I'm not hungry.
Let's move on now.
Okay, ideas about God. So God is not a physical being. He's the fundamental consciousness of the universe. And here's I mentioned the Ein Sof, so I'm going to talk about it a little more. So this is an idea that comes out of the Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. It's the unknown to us. It represents God prior to self-manifestation as a divine and endless light. The term Ein Sof also means nothing in the profound sense of no thing. It exists at the lowest possible energy, the 0-point energy, which is an electromagnetic force. But at the same time, it extends to all infinity. Could the 0-point field and an electromagnetic force possibly be a manifestation of the Ein Sof or of God?
Well, I'm kind of coming around to this position. A few years ago when I first started working on the 0-point energy problem, and I got papers published on that, things seemed to be going in the direction that I thought of God as being, as usual, sort of out there, somehow great being, and us being physical entities. But it began to make more and more sense to me to realize that this great force, this 0-point energy, which permeates the universe, is there for the having, for the taking. It being there, why should this thing not be the fundamental driver for the entire universe? So I've come around quite a bit on thinking that indeed this is the thing that causes the universe to have its properties and to exist. And this is what happened in the interval between no time at all and the Big Bang. Could be playing a role there. Just a little speculation.
Yeah, he believes, or he's coming to believe, as he said, that the ZPE, zero-point energy, may play a role in stabilizing atoms and thereby sustaining the universe. So this is the closest the universe comes to having an on-off switch if it were ever to be ended. St. Augustine of Hippo in 412 AD said that God sustains the universe. If God's power ever ceased to govern, creatures, their essences would pass away and all nature would perish. Whenever a builder puts up a house and departs, his work remains in spite of the fact that he's no longer there. But the universe will pass away in the twinkling of an eye if God withdraws his ruling hand.
Here, here, St. Augustine.
Yes. Ideas about God. There exists an infinite eternal consciousness, which is all there is. It fills the universe. It seeks to express itself in all its infinite creative potential. Our reality is one such creation. This is an interesting thought here. God is disguised as the world, and the purpose of the game of creation is to uncover the divine, to explore the limits of who we are, and to actualize God's self-awareness. The only thing that exists is consciousness. The consciousness is God, and it is what we are made up of. Its thoughts manifest as our universe and its laws. Since God is all there is, all living things on earth and elsewhere are manifestations of himself. It is incorrect to think that a reality consisting of illusions is less than a reality comprised of real material things. That is because real material things do not even exist. Indeed, they cannot exist, as stated above. Consciousness in God thinks, and his thinking creates an enormous number of offspring. We're the same as nature as God, but we're only sparks, of course. We're infinitesimally smaller. Since God is all there is, all living things on earth and elsewhere are manifestations of himself.
Right, we've driven that into the ground. But that's the
I
real
know,
point, the
yeah.
point of
I
this,
skipped over some.
the point of this model, that you don't need two different things, matter and energy and something spiritual. The spiritual nature of God and the rest of the universe is the only thing, the only thing that needs to exist. And what happens within that entity, that being, is that her thoughts, or like our dreams, create reality. And it's that creation of reality, which is us. It's literally us that get created. That's how the game is played.
So here's a really interesting comparison between the side of being scientific or science, the scientific perspective of what the universe is all about, and those who just experience God. How can we reconcile a belief in an all-powerful personal God with the discoveries being made in modern science? Here's the official position of the National Academy of Science. Religions and science answer different questions about the world. Whether there is a purpose to the universe or a purpose for human existence are not questions for science. Science is a way of knowing about the natural world. It is limited to explaining the natural world through natural causes. Science can say nothing about the supernatural. Whether God exists or not is a question about which science is neutral. This is right and encouraging, and it recognizes the distinct spheres in which science and religion operate without declaring them incompatible. So Bernie is one of these people that has a foot in each side.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. One of them, he has a scientist hat, and then he has the experiencing God and studying about God's side.
Hat.
Yeah, he's got that hat. Okay. Science and experiencing God, slide 2. Oh, this is interesting. People always ask, well, If there can't really be any scientific evidence to prove God's existence, just how can you experience him? Well, it is possible to have evidence for something by experience or observation. For example, if someone asks you, "Do you believe that I love you?" You might believe them or you might not. Either way, your belief would not depend on an experiment that had proved that the person loved you. You can't get scientific data off of that. Your belief would depend, however, on your observations of that person. And those observations would serve as evidence on whether or not you should believe that person. In the same way, we are able to design an experiment to prove the existence of God. It can provide numerous observations that point to his existence. There are 10 fundamental constants of nature that have values that seem to be just right for the evolution of life. Bernie lists these in his second book, The Purpose-Guided Universe. It's important that a non-technical constant is observed in water. So we all experience water. It's something we use several times every day. So the boiling point of water is unusually high. Hence, it remains as a liquid in the critical range for biological structures. Also, it has the unusual property of being less dense when frozen. So that's how icebergs float in Antarctica.
Where martinis float too.
And that's how ice cubes float in martinis or margaritas, whatever. Okay.
Right.
I like margaritas better than martinis. All right, here's one of my favorite topics because I'm a professional music teacher and an opera singer. A mathematical universe and music. So God is a mathematician, according to Mario Livio. The universe appears to have been designed by a pure mathematician. Einstein wondered, how is it possible that mathematics fits so excellently with the objects of physical reality? This idea goes back to Plato and Pythagoras, who believed that in addition to the physical world we perceive, there's also a real world of mathematical forms. So here's some examples. Mathematical concepts like pi, the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter, or the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. Other examples are Newton's laws of motion and Einstein's theory of relativity, special relativity, and general relativity. Music is closely tied to mathematics through harmonics. Johann Sebastian Bach, the father of modern music. I quote him so many times when I teach lessons to my children and my students. Johann Sebastian Bach is the father of modern music, and I show his little circle of fifths and how he tuned the piano. It's great fun. He devised a system of tuning that is based on mathematics. In this system, the 12 notes of the octave of the standard keyboard are tuned so it's possible to play music in all major or all minor keys without sounding perceptibly out of tune. Each step is the 12th root of 2. Other aspects of music, such as rhythm, time signature, and other notations, are also mathematical. The mathematical nature of music makes me wonder whether God uses music as a mathematical expression through sound. Or is it possible that music is mathematical because the universe was designed by a pure mathematician? So music could be perceived as a voice of God. It has the greatest influence on us of anything else abstract in the world. It undergirds all of society. It's impossible to get away from it because it's pervasive around the planet. And even though the forms it takes vary tremendously, from Muslim calls to prayer, to classical symphonies, to operas and masses, rock and pop and rap, and DJ music. Our hymn, it's always there. It's always there. It's God's voice in sound. One hymn even claims that all nature sings and round me rings the music of the spheres. Perhaps I said this previously, but I'll repeat it. Music by its mathematical nature is a universal expression for civilization and a voice of God. Hey, remember we talked about the logos a little while earlier? It's defined as an expression of thought or word that is intimately tied up with creation. When the word logos is spoken, it is also a sound which could be translated into music. And here's some mathematical aspects here. Some of you may be familiar with the circle of fifths on the left. So you start at the top, C major, no sharps or flats, A minor is the relative minor, and you move around to the right, and as you move to the right, you sharp the seventh step of each scale. You go up from C to G, that's a fifth on the piano. I'm using the keyboard, it's easier for me to think that way because it's all laid out. And then you go up to D and you've added an F sharp, you've maintained the C sharp. Go up to A and you've added a third sharp, a G sharp, which is the seventh step of A major. And then you have E, 4 sharps, B, 5 sharps. Then you go to F sharp major and 6 sharps. Okay. Then you go back up to the top and you move to the left and you add flats. And you go from C to F is a fifth. By the way, a fifth is 7 half steps if you're not musical. If you can imagine a keyboard, there are the space between every white key and every black key is a half step. So you go from F, then you go to B flat, and you flat the fourth step of these scales, and you go all the way around. I mean, it's very, very detailed. It's amazing how the whole thing worked out. And this Johann Sebastian Bach came up with this. That guy was a genius.
He was a busy man.
He was a busy man. He also had 32 children, so he was really busy. Can you believe he had 32 children? He did. Several wives too. Well, so they, out of all fairness, the people got sick back then, so they didn't live so long. All of his wives, I believe, died of natural causes. So probably from having too many children.
I wouldn't know.
I don't know. Anyway, the rhythmic notation for notes and rest. So here, this is another very easily to notice chart of how the mathematical of musical rhythms relate to each other. And if you don't know what the word rhythm refers to how long or how short you hold a note or rest.
So here you've got intervals on the left going around. Intervals intervals in the pitch, and in your table on the right you've got intervals in time. They're all time intervals.
Yes. Yeah, they're not. Yeah, good thing to point that out. Yeah, so there's a whole note, 4 beats. Then you move down, half note, 2 beats, quarter note, 1 beat, eighth note, half a beat, 16th note, quarter of a beat. And then you look, you can see how the whole note is up there. And then you can see it takes 2 half notes equal whole note, 4 quarter notes to equal a whole note, 8 eighth notes to equal a whole note, and 16 sixteenths to equal a whole note. So it starts moving pretty fast. Then when you get down to the 16th, there are also 30-second notes I did not put on this chart.
I think there are 64, so which are hemi-demi semi-quavers.
Are there really 64?
So.
Okay, hemi-demi semi.
I think it's
okay.
True.
Okay, anyway, so here's an example of a time signature on the bottom left. That's the treble clef or the G clef. And that's where the right hand plays on the piano. Female voices sing, sometimes tenor voices sing there. Bass voices sing on the bass clef, and I don't have that notated on this page. But as you see, the 3-4, the 3 stands for how many beats would be in that measure, and the 4 underneath it stands for the fact that the quarter note gets 1 beat. So it's pretty easy to realize how everything relates to each other here through that. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now we're going to move on. We spoke about near-death experiences, and these point to God. These two phenomena provide the evidence that the God model is valid. This is evidence that we are not just the result of some chemical evolution of molecules, but that we are immortal spirits ever seeking to improve ourselves. In the case of near-death experiences, observers give us reports of the afterlife that point to the fact that there is a heaven experience and our spirits live on in a new form or body. In Eben Alexander's book, Proof of Heaven, which Bernie and I found fascinating, he described an experience of God as melting into a deep, velvety, loving space. We don't just dissolve into some sort of void or vacuum, as some skeptics think. We are eternal beings. The brain is more a prison from which our conscious awareness is liberated at the time of bodily death, enabling a robust afterlife that also involves reincarnation. This leads to the foundational principle of the God model, an infinite and eternal consciousness that constructs what we perceive as reality. So I don't know if you know who Eben Alexander is, but he was a very skeptical, at one time, a very skeptical neurosurgeon who didn't believe in God, didn't believe in life after death. He was just completely into science and the physical realm. But he had this horrible illness where he went into a coma for it was a viral infection, right?
Yes, 8 days.
Yeah, 8 days, and everyone thought that he would never come out of it. And what was interesting is that his body went into a coma, and he was able to travel through the different levels of heaven and remember it all when he came back. So after that, he completely changed his mind because he saw that he had been wrong, that he was missing a whole bunch of information that he did not even realize existed. So here's another person, psychiatrist, Professor Ian Stevenson from the University of Virginia. He became known for his research into cases he considered suggestive of reincarnation. After studying 3,000 cases of children who claimed to remember past lives, he concluded that emotion, memories, and even physical bodily features could be transferred from one life to another. Some of these children actually had birthmarks from the life-ending incident. He interviewed a boy that I guess his sister remembered had shot himself. And then the person that reincarnated came back, and he remembered shooting himself, and he came back with a birthmark under his chin. And Ian Stevenson interviewed him, and suspecting that there could be an exit wound at the top of his head, he parted the boy's hair, and indeed there was a birthmark at the top of his head. So that was a pretty astounding case. I don't know, I think the most profound case that Bernie and I came across was Dr. James Tucker's research, who was a protege of Ian Stevenson. And by the way, Bernie and I belonged to the Society for Scientific Exploration, and we managed the journal for 10 years. So we came across some really fascinating research. And all the talks that we went to, I mean, that's one of the reasons that we got so interested in the topics we cover in The Miracle of Our Universe, is because we learned so much being a member of the Society for Scientific Exploration. So we highly recommend that society to any of you who might be interested. They have a website. Anyway, so Dr. James Tucker carried out research with a very strong case. The fellow's name was James Leninger. Starting at the age of 2 or 3, Leninger started remembering the past life of James Houston, who was an American pilot who had been shot down in World War II by the Japanese in the Pacific Ocean. These memories included details of an American aircraft carrier, the first and last names of a friend on the ship, the location of the attack that killed him, and the nature of the hit that brought down his plane. All details were later confirmed to be accurate. He even met his friend from the aircraft carrier in a reunion, and the friend confirmed that Leninger's memories of Houston were correct. Then I had an NDE when I was swept out to sea at the age of 16 years for 45 minutes by an undertow current. During this experience, before I was rescued, my ancestors from the other side came to keep me afloat in a wonderful halo of love. I'm fortunate to have directly experienced the side beyond the veil as a short NDE and to feel God's love. And I can tell you more about this during the questions and answers period if you're interested. You could ask me more about it. Okay, let's go on. We got to cover this because we mentioned it earlier, the 0 point field. This is really important. So the 0 point field with its attendant 0 point energy, ZPE, is recognized as a vast field of electromagnetic energy, also known as the quantum vacuum field, or QVF. This field represents the underlying energy that is everywhere in the universe, even where there is otherwise nothing but vacuum. It's composed of a combination of every frequency or wavelength that exists. Some are long and others short. It's perfectly random. There is a Casimir force that happens when two parallel metal plates are pushed together by an overpressure of the ZPE from the outside of the plates. There's a little illustration on the bottom right. The Casimir cavity can be created that takes advantage of this force. I do have to add, this Casimir cavity is down at the nano scale, very, very tiny. So technology has now finally just gotten advanced enough that we're hoping to be able to build a Casimir cavity and create a Casimir generator out of it. The ZPE can be manipulated through the use of Casimir cavities. It would squeeze out photon energy. Now, I'm not going to tell you all the details right here, but you could get the details about the Casimir generator on our website. We just got a new website put up tonight, thanks to a really creative fellow, Chris Burns, and we're so grateful, Chris, for you putting up that website. It's amazing. So I hope you guys can all look at it. It's www.jovion.com.
And I've got to mention the objection that oftentimes comes up when discussing
Well,
this.
can we talk more about what it is before you do the objection, Bernie?
Okay, well, we'll probably have about
We have a few minutes still. Okay, so you can talk about it at the end, okay? The invention that we have in mind is a game-changing invention because it would create clean energy technology that would combat climate change and create an infinite source of energy that was already known to Einstein and Max Planck. We believe that the ZPF can be tapped in a way that would provide humanity with an endless supply of totally clean energy. So the founders down here at the bottom, Bernard Haisch and Garrett Modell. I'm now the CEO. He got me roped in. I find it really interesting. I think it's very important. That's why I'm helping on the project. So this Casimir generator invention, as I said, is game changing. Um, now you can talk about the conventional heat engine if you want to, Bernie.
Well,
Yeah.
when you try to extract energy from the vacuum, it's been said for the last 80 years or so that you can't do that because the lowest energy level is the lowest energy level. You can't extract energy from it and get anything useful. But there's a way to get around that, which is to run gases through Casimir cavities. And the Casimir cavity, the lowest energy is lower than the lowest energy of the entire other part of the spectrum, which is out and everywhere in the universe. And so you can derive energy from the lowest energy.
You can get lower than low inside
you get lower
than zero.
Exactly.
You get below zero inside a nano
All
Casimir
thanks to the
cavity.
Casimir cavity. So
Yeah.
that's the important thing to know about this. It's not just craziness, it's that we realize that the Casimir cavity has certain properties that have not yet been exploited.
Yes, you can see the little diagram on the right. So we envision a closed system, and you see the little atoms moving through the pipes, and there's a pump, and then up on the top is a Casimir cavity. And notice as the atom goes inside the Casimir cavity, it gets squeezed down because the longer waves of the 0-point energy are not able to get into it, so it gets below zero. And when this happens, the photons are squeezed off, and they are then emitted, and they go into a solar cell or photovoltaic cell. And then after that, electricity can be generated. That's the idea of our invention.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Bernie didn't say anything about violating the second law of thermodynamics, but that's what some people complain of. But we have to emphasize the fact that our process does not involve heat, because the 0-point energy field, so heat's not involved. And if probably a lot of you don't know what the second law of thermodynamics is, because I certainly didn't know when I started on the project. But there's an example, melting of an ice cube. Ice cubes in a drink absorb heat from the drink. That makes the drink cooler. Okay, so next slide. Here is more of a lower, like deep down inside view of what happens to an atom when it goes inside a Casimir cavity or a series of Casimir cavities. So if you start on the left, you see the little atom with its electrons. And remember, these little electrons could be a sea of probability, as I told you about earlier. But for this graph here, we really wanted to put the little dots so you could see them. And so Bernie believes that the 0-point energy sustains atoms. It sustains the universe, as we said in the grander scale. All right. So a gas atom expels photons as it passes through Casimir cavity tunnels. It regains energy upon exiting each cavity, where each red electron is energized by the 0-point energy. And you see the little squiggly arrows going off. That's where the photons will be shooting off up into the photovoltaic or solar cells to be gathered to generate electricity. And if you look at the legend, you can see the orange is the Casimir cavity. The gray is the non-conducting cavity. The green squiggly lines are the 0-point energy. The red squiggly lines are the energy expelled from the electron. The red is the electron, and the blue is the nucleus. It will be
How it works this way.
Yeah, it's just shooting off photons. And if you don't know what photons are, they're little particles of light.
No. Oh, yes.
Yes, yeah, they are. Yeah, okay. I'm glad I said it correctly. Always feel free to correct me, Bernie, because he's the scientist. I've learned a lot from being around him, but I'm the music major, okay? I have a master's in music. He is a Ph.D. in astrophysics. So together are quite the team.
So I don't want to run over.
This is the last slide. This is the last slide. It's just exactly almost an hour. Okay. Yeah. So this is my slide because I want to present my perspective for the last slide and leave on an up note. So
Yeah.
how do you experience a guaranteed ticket to heaven? Well, in my perspective, in my view, you have a guaranteed ticket to heaven because you are a spark of God and are a part of Him. How do you experience heaven while you're on earth? It's important to be in a state of gratitude because this opens your mind for optimism. It opens your mind for love and God's still small voice. And it is still. You have to still your mind so you can hear it. The good news is that anyone, even you, can achieve this if you take the time to still your monkey mind. You need to meditate and let yourself fall into the light. It's really quite beautiful. I experienced that when I had my awakening of the heart. I saw that there is light connecting each one of us. Everywhere we go, everyone, we are connected together by light. If everyone makes the effort to do this, dialoguing directly with God on a daily basis, our world would be catapulted to a higher level of awareness, and the human race would become ever more enlightened, and there would be peace on earth at long last, peace on earth. Wouldn't it be wonderful? And I end on this note.
Thanks, Marsha.
Okay.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much. And I want to just encourage people, if you have questions now, go ahead, type them in the chat. Or I think Susan had a question. She had raised her hand earlier. So Susan, if you still have a question, you can go ahead and raise your hand. If you want to ask a question directly, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you. So while people are putting their questions in the chat, I wanted to ask about, I had two questions. You know, it's kind of I don't know, I see it a lot that, you know, physics seems to be catching up with ancient wisdom traditions, you know, things that are models of the universe or God that have been taught for millennia, like in Vedanta and, you know, Buddhism and stuff like that. And it's interesting to me that the position of the National Association of Science, Academy of Science.
Academy of Science, yeah.
So science has nothing to do with the purpose of human experience, right? We don't want to go there. We don't want to touch. We don't touch it. And I don't know. I don't know about drawing that, you know, keeping that line there. What do you think?
I think, well, one of the reasons we're going in this direction is because I do want to bring the two together again. Science and spirituality, I think, is absolutely essential that they come together again. And that's my duty now to work on that.
Yeah, I agree.
It's important to blend them or merge them, really. It's what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like heal that Cartesian split, right? That idea that you actually, most scientists I know are deeply spiritual people, like yourselves, right? Thomas wants to know, how do you answer those who want a proof of God's existence?
That's a tougher thing to.
Well, I did that slide on that. You can't prove it by data. You could prove it by example, right?
Experience, yeah.
Yeah, experience.
In fact, there is this is confuse things a little bit, but there's a book of mine that came out. This is the third book of mine that actually had as a title "Proof of God," and the reason it had that title was because Simon Schuster, who published this in the book, were going around reorganizing themselves. So somehow the title of the book went floating around and got stuck on our book. And you know, I would hate to have you disappointed in going and seeing Proof of God because it's mentioned as the title of that book, and it's not. It's too strong a title. It must have been made up by some secretary. But I digress there, I guess.
Yeah, it's
how would you find evidence for God? Well,
yeah, well, so Bernie, he wrote the purpose-guided universe, and see. Oh, you've moved it, Bernie.
I know where it is, right?
Where is it?
It's in the top over there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So in the back of his book, The Purpose-Guided Universe, we highly recommend this. It does show a lot of evidence for the existence of God. So these are very scientific, technical reasons, but it's the 10 critical properties of the universe, and they're scientific reasons. And if these 10 properties did not exist, there would be no universe. We wouldn't even be here.
Just out of curiosity, how do those 10 align with the 10 Sephirot of the Kabbalah?
That's interesting. I don't know. I like it. Yeah,
I'm going to go
know.
back to that. I read your book. It was a while ago. I'm going to go back and see about that.
That's interesting. I didn't know there were 10. Wow. Okay. We actually took a class on Kabbalah. It was given by Rabbi Stephen Fisdell.
Oh, sure.
About 15 years ago. It was an amazing class.
Yeah, he was a mystic. I mean, I think he's passed on, but he was a mystic. So Victoria, by the way, also just wants to say that your books are excellent, and she highly recommends them. So Sue says, this is a question from Kevin Kaiser, who you may know. Is God really necessary? Occam's razor says we need to look for a simpler explanation than the universe itself to explain the origin of the universe. An infinite God is more complex than the universe. Isn't the uncertainty principle enough to explain the creation of everything?
Well, I slice it this way, that there is, instead of having a physical world and a world of whatever spiritual, paranormal things exist, which we know there are in this world of ours, that's two totally different things. Whereas what I have here is a model in which everything is reduced to one thing. The consciousness of God is the one and only thing. Nothing else exists but that. And that is something that gives a meaning to the universe. And we kind of understand what it's like because we have dreams. It's like a God goes into a deep dream state and creates this universe with this more and instability when he does the cosmic dreaming.
Yeah, I think that our theory that consciousness created everything and we're part of that consciousness, I think that is the simplest explanation of Occam's razor. The other one, the Heisenberg uncertainty and all those other ideas, they spring out of it. They're more complex, really.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Unity is as simple as it gets, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Heidi wants to know, how does biocentrism fit into your model?
I don't know. I read the book about 2 years ago. This is a book by I can't think of his name right now. But I didn't. I'll be honest with you. I didn't like it. I thought there was a lot of ego in that book. Unless I'm remembering the wrong thing from 2 or 3 years ago. I remember thinking that the biocentrism, whatever it was kind of an egotistic, thing.
Maybe we need Heidi to explain to us what.
Yeah, maybe Heidi, if you want to raise your hand.
I don't know. I don't even know what it is. Sorry.
Yeah, if because I'm not up enough on it either. So if Heidi, if you want to raise your hand and talk more about biocentrism, it could be an interesting discussion. In the meantime, Jerry has his hand up. So Jerry, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey,
Hi, Jerry.
Welcome.
Yeah.
I appreciated your discussions. I was thinking about an answer to the question that was just previously made on proof of God, or how do you know? And so I just thought I'd give some thoughts to that. We are the I am essence. That's who we really are.
Right.
And when we state an affirmation that brings us into that point that you are the essence of God, you can say something like, I'm rethink I am, and you spiral into who you are. What happens is that your rate of rotation if you use a pendulum, what's called the neutral pendulum, personal wavelength, the pendulum automatically starts rotating very, very fast. And you're not trying to do it, but as you get into that center of who you are, the pendulum rotates. And then the other thing that happens is that within a few minutes, as you think that of who you are, I am rethinking, rethink I am, the pendulum suddenly stops. And then you enter into this center of stillness, and everything is still, and everything around you is still. And when you meditate, you can achieve this, and you can achieve this very quickly with affirmations. There are a number of different affirmations that you can do that with. And if one practices this and does this a few times, your rate of rotation goes up, and you can measure it, and so all these things will happen. So that's a soft answer to the question of proof of God, but it's something that anyone who looks and does the field of radiesthesia will feel that what happens with the pendulum, it just rotates. So I just thought I'd mention that as another side point. I know that this discussion isn't with that purpose in mind, but I just thought that that's how I recognize that that is the case.
Let me just ask you, what is rotation? Rotation of what?
Okay, what it is that there's something called a neutral pendulum, and it doesn't have any crystals or anything associated with it. It's an acrylic ball or wooden ball. Mm-hmm. And in radiesthesia, what you do is that you learn how to determine the wavelength of who you are. And that's dependent upon the string length on the pendulum, which is like the string in music. If you have a note, you pluck it, and the length of the string is a note. That's between 2 points. A pendulum is really the point of the weight and the point of the finger holding the string. And the string, if you move up the string, you come into resonance with who you are. And when that resonance occurs, the pendulum goes clockwise. And when it does that, it goes at a certain rate. And then what happens is that if you bring yourself into the realm of who you are, of your essence, the pendulum just takes off on its own. It's so you doing it because you are who you are, but you're not consciously trying to, let's rotate the pendulum very rapidly. It just happens because of the nature of the field of radiesthesia, the nature of who you are, and the nature of how these things work. And it's done by awareness of the energies that are there. It's just coming into resonance with yourself. So that's sort of there's a lot more to it, but that's sort of the basis of it. And we can chat one of these days. I can tell you more about this whole phenomenon of radiesthesia and how you can pick up on resonance. And you can pick up on resonance of subtle energies of a color or anything else. And by picking it up just means that your subconscious mind gets at the resonance of it, and that defines a wavelength. And the pendulum can pick up the color red, can pick up EMF of some sort, and it's just a length. And when that happens, the pendulum rotates. That's the nature of radiesthesia.
Okay.
It sounds a bit like dowsing. I've done a lot of dowsing in my time.
It's not quite dowsing, because dowsing is a mental thing. It has elements of dowsing, but radiesthesia is picking up the energies, the resonance of the C note or D note or whatever it is. And it could be a color, it could be anything. Everything has a subtle energy associated with it. And it picks up that resonance with that energy. And so you're just holding a pendulum, getting it going to and fro motion. And then when the to and fro motion changes, as soon as you hit the wavelength, it's just like a tuning fork or a monochord instrument. You pluck it, and all the other notes of different octaves or harmonics will vibrate ad infinitum. And that's how you pick up subtle energies. That's the mechanism for doing that. So you take your mind out of mentally doing it. Although you've trained yourself that a pendulum can go in a clockwise manner, and there's a reason for that too, which I won't go into.
I see Russell talk.
Russell has his hand raised. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You here?
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks, Gary.
you, Jerry. And Russell, go ahead and unmute yourself. Russell, are you there? Let me see. There.
I think I've got it now.
Yeah, there you go.
Hi, Russ.
Hi, thank you very much for the very interesting talk. In a way, what Bernie is proposing is very similar to what Buddhists believe. As Buddhists believe that the organizing principle of the universe is consciousness. Consciousness is, the universe is filled with consciousness, but they don't have a God. There's, if the universe is filled with, I noticed that Marsha often interchanges the idea of God and consciousness, and the Buddhists do that entirely. They feel that ourselves are one with the universe. The universe is filled with consciousness, and there's no need to add the idea of a deity to that.
Well, you can interpret that.
Yeah, but we don't think of God as being a desert patriarch on a throne either. We use the word God just because that's a word that's been used throughout time, but we are interchanging consciousness, the divine consciousness, with the word God, right, Bernie?
The Buddhists would never say that consciousness wants to do something. In the model where you say the universe is filled with consciousness, the consciousness is not an entity that would want to do something. It's a function of nature.
My view is that there's something that the consciousness wants to do, and that is to get to know itself and interact with its creation. And so there is a part of that consciousness that wants to do these things. And you try to split that into a godlike thing that you see on the one hand versus a non-godlike thing on the other. But I don't know why you'd want to split those, because you would have having a single God, quote, cosmic consciousness seems like a nice parsimonious way to slice this up. Of course, I don't know these things. I mean, I'm giving you.
I
guess my feeling is similar to the.
It's a model.
Yeah. My feeling is similar to the woman who said, "Is God necessary?"
Yeah.
And I think that's as the Buddhist view. If the world is filled with consciousness, and consciousness agrees with Spinoza, of course. Spinoza and Einstein all use a metaphor that God is the organizing principle of the universe. And Buddhists would say that, but they would not invoke a God in addition to the universe filled with consciousness.
Well, I would say that filled with consciousness is the kind of God we're talking about. The rest is nomenclature, semantics.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page, Russell.
I think so.
Really?
There's also a question of all the people who have near-death experiences have very similar near-death experiences. And my feeling is that they're probably all brought up as Christians. Because near-death experiences, you don't hear about near-death experiences in the Eastern literature, to the best of my knowledge. Near-death experiences seem to be a Christian phenomena where you go back to the all-encompassing God that you grew up with as a child.
Right.
Because I heard our friend, the neurologist who was unconscious for a long time, and he, of course,
David Alexander.
He of course was a non-believer, but he grew up in a Christian household.
Right.
So I think that there's a hypothesis. I don't have any data, but my understanding that almost all the people who have near-death experiences were brought up in a Christian household in which you're ready to be accepted by a deity.
Yeah.
That's
I had-
interesting. I think PMA
Maybe.
Atwater said that in her presentation. I remember hearing that as well, Russell. That's an interesting area for exploration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but then what about the reincarnation experiences? Those were from children in India. They weren't raised as Christians, and they remembered their past lives when they were shot or whatever.
Well,
No.
I definitely, I mean, the evidence for reincarnation is very strong.
Yeah.
And I knew Stevenson, so I wouldn't doubt that at all. But that you can have reincarnation. Reincarnation does not require a deity.
Right, it does require, but in fact, the reports that come in do include a deity, and so I would say that since they come in on their own in such a voluminous amount, that I take them at face value. That when people say I after having died, I've gone and I met Jesus or God, I tend to want to take that at face value. Who am I to say that that's not possible? Who am I to say that?
There are people that remember what it was like when they were in heaven between lives. Even there's a book on that.
Yeah, I think that's the rule. I think that
Yeah.
people, by and large, who communicate after death, communicate from a in-between position. That is, they're not on Earth and they're not in any kind of heaven. They're just a discarnate entity available to communicate with us. That one of the, as a physicist, I know that the evidence for survival is very strong. So somebody is communicating with you, and you recognize a person who's communicating with you, and you recognize them as a deceased person, and you'd like to know what are their space-time coordinates, and that's probably a bad question. That is their consciousness is outside of conventional space-time.
There's a comment here in the comment section that says there is a lot of collected data of global culture with various kinds of experiences of NDAs. That said, this person also had an NDE, which revealed a very different thing than a Christian heaven. So really interesting it would be really interesting to see what people across the globe experience in their near-death experience.
By and large, the NDEs we hear about is someone who dies and goes down a path and then is accepted by God. I mean, that would be the garden variety of NDE.
A garden variety.
Yeah.
Garden variety. This is, so what is said here, it revealed this NDE revealed that there is an infinite pattern of form, void, a precursor to God and void after God, forward and back. If we wish to describe it in linear time, it opened my perception of God as a being which itself experiences limitation, right? Expansion and limitation. Very interesting.
Right.
Well, thank you very much for your creative work.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really great to hear your voice.
It's been
It's good to hear you, Russell.
Yeah, we miss you.
We'll give you a call tomorrow, Russell.
And then Avtar Singh would like to speak. So if you want to unmute yourself.
Yes. If you remember, I made a presentation about 2-3 years ago on the similar matter on the same question about science and God. So I just wanted to make a comment that the biggest proof of, let's say, some higher power or God or whatever we call our consciousness is the law and order we observe in the universe. If there was no order and if it was all chaos, if there was no order, it's the order and the laws in the universe which would not prevail if there was no higher power, no matter what we call it, God or one uniting power which
Well,
instills this order and laws in the universe.
Well, in fact, that's exactly what Marsha was saying when she talked about the 10 things that had to be have the just right properties to make the whole mess come together of the universe. And that's pretty much taken as being something that's credible. There are lots of articles about it. What Marsha presented about what my work was really someone else's work. There are lots of publications in this field. But I agree with you that this all depends upon being. I'm stumbling a bit now. I'm trying to get my ideas together. But can you say something about this, Marsha?
About law and order. Well,
Yes,
the
that's right.
10 fundamental constants.
There we go. That's exactly.
Yeah, the 10 fundamental constants. They're very scholarly scientific terms, which if I read it off, probably most of you wouldn't know what it is. But I mean, I can read some of them if you want to know. But that is the order, yes, like you were mentioning.
In fact, there aren't just 10. There are, if you look far enough, there are maybe 10, 15, 20 even, because people once they realize this.
It won't be a cosmos. It would be a chaos.
Right.
There was no higher power determining the laws and the order in the universe. That's one point. I really enjoyed your presentation. And this one more point is that you mentioned the 0 point energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have done some work on that. The 0 point energy of the quantum mechanics is actually not 0 point. The Casimir effect has a lot of energy. And that's why you can draw energy from the quantum vacuum, which is 120 orders of magnitude more energy than the cosmological constant, which is the universal vacuum.
Yes.
So the point I'm making, this is the biggest unresolved puzzle in science, that how come the dark energy or cosmological constant energy, which is expanding the universe, is 120 orders of magnitude smaller than the quantum vacuum. And this is still an unresolved paradox in science. And that's where the crux is. The consciousness cannot be equated to quantum vacuum, which has so much energy, 120 orders of magnitude more than the universal vacuum, which is more closer to consciousness, at least in the which we call shunya or real zero. The real zero is the astral vacuum and not the quantum vacuum, which has a lot of energy. So this whole Eastern concept of shunya, the so-called the zero, the real zero, the zero was invented in India. So I want to point out, and the shunya is referred to the consciousness or the God or the Brahma or whatever you call them. But that shunya is 100. So that's more closer to the spatial vacuum and not the quantum vacuum, which has a lot of energy, about 120 order of magnitudes higher energy. So I just wanted to point that out, that unresolved scientific paradox about the vacuum.
Okay.
Thank you. I also want to note that you put in the question and answers, what is the purpose for human life?
Yeah.
Correct.
Do you have thoughts on that? Or do you want to listen to Marsha?
Purpose for human life.
Yeah, I'd like to hear their views on that, as to if it's all virtual reality, what is the purpose of human life?
Well, I mean, our ideas are that we come here to develop our spirits, our souls, to learn. We're here in the school of life. And so when we're discarnate, it's harder to learn because we're floating around, but we're down into the physical realm temporarily. We have to deal with all sorts of life issues. They get thrown at us. So we're here to learn. We're here to develop. We're here because God wants to experience. Also, we said that God experiences through us. and we're the eyes, ears of God. But I think that because we are sparks of God, we want to increase our awareness and our abilities also. So Earth is kind of a school.
Right,
What do you
I
agree
think
about
that's
that?
true. I think God wants to have a school that he can interact with to understand, experience what a reality would be like. If he didn't make these other worlds and come into them, then he would probably be a very bored God.
Yeah. Hey, I want to just take a moment to show everyone our websites because I realized I didn't do that yet. Can I do that, Judy? And then we could go on
Yes,
before I
absolutely.
forget. Okay. So I'm going to share this. So we have a website, The Miracle of Our Universe. And can you guys all see it? It's just www.themiracleofouruniverse.com, all run together. And you can go and see information about our book, and you can order from Amazon or other booksellers too. We just happen to have a link on Amazon because that's a really popular place to go look for books. We've given so far 3 podcasts, and this is our 4th big presentation tonight. And then you go to Amazon and you can purchase our book, and you can get it for real next week. And then we also have a brand new website for Jovian Corporation, which is where we explore the 0-point energy. And that is just www.jovian.com. And you can read, if you're wanting to know at least more about the 0-point energy, which we spoke about some, you can come to the website and you can see what we're all about. And we have a very detailed explanation of our process, the Casimir process. And we spent a lot of time writing it, and it is pretty much understandable by the common person who is interested in science. I mean, it really is, takes a little bit of science, wanting to know about science to read it, but you can see what is a Casimir cavity, and it talks about the atom and how we could turn it into a practical device. And I named this device myself. I thought, oh, let's call it a Casimir generator. I thought it would be rather catchy. We could call it for short the CG, the CG, the Casimir generator. And then just, I spoke about the photon emission, and you saw some of these things in our presentation. But anyway, so if you guys all got that down, www.jovian.com, and then the Miracle of Our Universe, you can read more about us. Okay, thank you for giving me that opportunity. I didn't want to let it pass.
Yeah.
So
Sure. Yes.
wait, let's you ask some more questions.
Okay.
I'm going to do one more question and I'm going to wrap it up. Raj Kumar wanted to know about sharing the link for the website Miracle of the Universe. Is it miracleoftheuniverse.com or is it just on Amazon?
Oh, the Miracle of Our Universe.com.
Okay. The
It's
Miracle.
on Amazon and elsewhere.
The book is on Amazon. Its book is on other booksellers. It's like it
like a regular book.
Target, Walmart, Barnes and Noble, major bookstores.
Okay. So I'm going to ask one more question about love. You talked earlier about love as an emotion, right? Love is experienced in humanity as an emotion, but it's also the fundamental force as a frequency. I'm gonna differentiate between love as frequency and love as emotion, right? That continuum. So there's a question about a personal and intimate experience of God.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than and the question is anonymous, so I this idea of being just kind of experiencing ourselves as God, to experience and to learn, which feels a little you said like a chess piece, like where,
Yeah.
and what do you have to say about experiencing God as a loving being, as a loving aspect of the experience? And I hope
Well,
I hope I
Oh.
asked the question correctly.
Brittany, I want to answer
Oh, go
about
ahead, sure.
with my awakening of the heart
Go ahead.
experience, and then you could say more. Mine is very personal. I did mention I had an awakening of the heart, and it was exceptional. It was so profound beyond anything that ever happened to me or could happen to me, because I was at a satsang of Gangaji's. I was with Russell Targ and Jane Katra and Bernie, and we were just sitting down on the floor, you sit on cushions. I don't know if you know who Gangaji is. She's a spiritual leader here in the Bay Area and in Oregon. And she is very wise. She channels a high energy, and she dialogues with people. Okay, so she came into the room. This is my first time ever seeing her. I didn't even know who she was. I had high recommendations from Russell. So she came into the room, and she happened to look my way where I was. And this energy just came bam, right into my eyes and right into my body. It was like an atomic bomb of love shot out through my entire body. It was amazing. It was an atomic explosion of love and God's love. So I had to share that with you. And when I closed my eyes, I saw swirls of pinks and purples spiral up my spine, going out the top of my top chakra. And my heart started beating. Tears of joy just came pouring out of my eyes, just streaming down my cheeks. And I was in ecstasy. And I looked around the room, and I could see this web of light connecting each being in the room. And we were all one. It's who we are. We're group consciousness light beings. And so that's my experience of God's love. It's tremendous.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I will never, I live with it all the time. I go back and I think about that experience, and it brings me great joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And the follow-up is, this is what he wrote. This presentation helps me in my path to becoming God, and my capacity for ecstasy, the need to increase for me to embody my role as God. Now I am at peace, more with the impersonal aspect, the way a baby wants to see what happens, or how an elbow works, or how an ankle feels, etc. I am God's dream come true. That is lovely, because
Wow.
I originated from God's curiosity, and I am living out God's ongoing curiosity in real-time life. I mean, that's fabulous.
That's the
Who is
same
that
idea.
from? Who is that from?
Anonymous.
Oh, I love it. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah,
Something we
that's
talked
beautiful.
about.
Yeah. That's
Okay,
very
so
encouraging.
the miracleofouruniverse.com does not land on the website. Is this right?
Let me show you again. Hold on.
Raj Kumar, the way you have it right now, there's a space in between. I don't know if that means anything. The miracleofouruniverse.com.
Can you see it?
If there is a
TheMiracleofOuruniverse.com. Did you put the www in front of it?
Yeah, I think there's a space after the www though. So
Oh, okay. Can
try-
you get it, Judy? Does it work? It should work because I'm there. You see, I'm right on
Yeah.
the page.
works
Yeah.
for me. So okay. I want to thank you so much. I have loved this discussion, and the questions that have come up, deep considerations about the nature of reality, the nature of the universe, and our part in it, which is just our happy place.
Yeah.
That's my happy place. So thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for attending, for being here. Have a good weekend, and we will see you next time.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was really fun.
Yeah.